Coming up on Network Africa, African leaders laud historic peace summit between Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Eritrea's President Isaias Afwerki. South Sudan rebels reject a peace plan to reinstate rebel leader Riek Machar as vice president. And former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzani Zuma, is charged with state capture corruption. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tevito Kwefagbemi. We begin today in East Africa, where Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Eritrea's President Isaias Afwerki have signed a joint declaration of peace and friendship, specifying that the state of war between the two nations is over. According to Eritrea's information minister, the agreement specifies 5 pillars and was signed this morning at the State House before Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed departed Eritrea after a historic 2-day visit. Both parties have re-established their diplomatic and trade ties after 2 decades of hostility. This is the first time the leaders from the two East African neighbors have met in almost 20 years after relations were cut off following a border dispute which killed tens of thousands of people in the late 1990s.
Laughter and hugs between the leaders of Ethiopia and Eritrea for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Once rivals for a long time, both leaders are now allies, mending ties and burying the hatchet. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was welcomed by his Eritrean counterpart for a historic peace summit in Asmara, the Eritrean capital. Unimaginable scenes of jubilation between the two nations transpired as the streets of one of the world's most isolated nations were lined with Ethiopian and Eritrean flags.
The feeling Dr. Abiy brought is not an easy one. Honestly speaking, the emotions the people display today speaks loudly. The chances and the opportunities were there for us, and we were hoping to utilize them. But they were locked away for us for the past 25 years. 25 years is not a short time. The loss we incurred in the past 25 years cannot be recovered. But today, we feel like we have not lost anything. We feel as if the materials lost have been regained. Congratulations, Dr. Abiy. We are together in the future journey. We will confront challenges and opportunities together and win together. Above all, congratulations to the people of Ethiopia and to the people of Eritrea.
Both leaders announced that they would reopen their embassies, hailing a stunningly swift rapprochement between the former bitter regional enemies.
The wall that was built between our people against their will for the last 20 years needs to be demolished. The war that took the lives of thousands and wasted many years and cost us financially dear had finally become war without death. The holy purpose you have at hand to close this chapter is, no doubt, if there is peace between Ethiopia and Eritrean people, the Horn of Africa region will be a region of peace and development. Our people who live scattered as refugees in humiliation will come back with dignity. Our citizens will not be sold and exchanged like commodities.
The two leaders personally symbolize a breakthrough, embracing warmly and swaying side by side to live traditional music at a lavish state dinner. They also opened phone lines between the two countries that had been cut for 20 years, and landlocked Ethiopia said it will be given access to the sea at an Eritrean port. The talks were the product of an unexpected peace initiative by Ethiopia's neo-reformist Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, which could transform the Horn of the African region, ending decades of animosity during which both countries remained isolated and dominated by their security forces.
Meanwhile, reactions have been trailing the historic meeting as African heads of state welcomed Sunday's meeting between the two leaders. On Twitter, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame praised both men's courage, lauded them for doing the right thing for their people. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta also congratulated Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki for choosing the path of dialogue and starting the journey of friendship. The African Union's Commissioner for Peace, Ismail Chergui, praised their exemplary leadership that he says will greatly contribute towards silencing the guns on the African continent by 2020. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres is expected to meet Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed later today in Addis Ababa. So let's get more on this story from an African affairs analyst, Mr. Chike Chude. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Always a pleasure.
Now, Ethiopia and Eritrea have formally declared an end to war. Do you think this new peace deal can be trusted?
Well, I mean, the good thing is that something nice, something wonderful is coming out of Africa for once. I mean, in terms of the conflicts that we have been seeing across the continent, and from all of the congratulations from African leaders and the joy and happiness that we see on the streets of Eritrea and Ethiopia, it's clear that people are very happy with what is going on. Well, are we going to see an end to the old age animosity and all of that? I would say it is early days yet, but I think if there's one thing that is very positive, it is the fact that the leaders concerned from both sides have been able to muster the political will needed to take this kind of a very bold and courageous decision. And of course, it is very clear that they are now in the eyes of the storm. They now have the burden of trying to ensure that this peace deal is as they say it is. Not all the issues have been resolved, but they have taken a very huge step towards resolving whatever remaining issues there are. And of course, a lot of fence building measures and all of that. So I think it's a good thing. Whether it's going to last, I have a feeling that they are committed. I have a feeling that they have the political will to get to this level, because having gotten to this level, play at the continental and the global stage, like I said, they now have the extra burden of making sure that it does not fall apart, because once it does, it will not be to their, it will not augur well in terms of their politics and the expectations that people have reposed in them. I think they will give it their best shot, and I see it succeeding.
But what changed this time? Because it happened so fast. Could this agreement have anything to do maybe with the change of leadership in Ethiopia?
Oh, clearly. I think that was the dynamic, actually, that brought about some of these things that we're beginning to see today. Of course, you know that Ethiopia itself has been embroiled in all kinds of crises in the past 3 years, protests and all of that, harassment of dissident voices, and then, arrest and all of that. But then that led to the resignation of the predecessor to Ahmed Abiy, and then a younger man was elected to govern in his place, and a lot of things began to happen almost immediately. There was a new aura, a new atmosphere that was created by that singular action by the parliamentarians and all of that. And then we see this manifest immediately. Of course, one of the things he did was to douse tension that was palpable already in Ethiopia. He lifted the state of emergency, and then all of a sudden this happens. And so a lot of people were taken by surprise. Not many people saw it, because what usually happens is that you're going to have a very long process. Sometimes it takes months, it takes years before you even get to this level. But it's a pleasant surprise. It caught a lot of people by surprise. But I think I agree with you that what led to it is the fact that a new leadership emerged in Ethiopia, a leadership that was not just interested in the people, but also that was bold enough and courageous enough to do the right thing.
Mr. Chike Chude, African Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
South Sudan rebels have rejected a peace plan to reinstate insurgent leader Riek Machar as vice president, saying it failed to dilute the strong power base of the country's president. The agreement naming Mr. Machar first vice president was reached in Entebbe in talks mediated by Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni. But an official of Mr. Machar's SPLM-IO rebel group says it is not acceptable. Riek Machar was President Salva Kiir's deputy until 2013, when a political disagreement between them degenerated into a war that has ravaged South Sudan ever since. The son of South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma, has appeared at a specialized commercial crimes court today on charges of corruption in the ongoing state capture saga, which sees him and the members of the Gupta family at the center. The accused, Duduzane Zuma, walked into the courtroom in ankle chains but was quite upbeat as he greeted journalists. His case was, however, adjourned to January 2019 and he was released on a 100,000 rand bail. Mr. Duduzane Zuma recently returned to South Africa for the funeral of his younger brother Vusi and will also appear in court for a culpable homicide case on July the 12th.
34-year-old Duduzane Zuma appeared in the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Johannesburg after handing himself over at the Johannesburg Central Police Station. He is being charged in connection with the alleged failed attempt to bribe South Africa's former Deputy Finance Minister, Mcebisi Jonas, who claimed in an affidavit that he was called to a meeting with Duduzane Zuma and businessman Ajay Gupta, who allegedly offered him 600 million rand, that's an equivalent of 15 billion naira, and the position of substantive finance minister if he agreed to work with them.
Today, Mr. Duduzane Zuma appeared in the Johannesburg Specialized Commercial Crime Court, charged with corruption with an alternative count of conspiracy to commit corruption, and this matter has been postponed to the 24th of January for the state to conduct further investigations.
The state did not oppose bail, so Mr. Zuma has been granted bail for 100,000 rand, and the case has been postponed to January the 24th, 2019. The accused has also agreed to hand over his passport and make arrangements with the investigating officer if he intends to travel abroad. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Well, Betty joins us live on the program to tell us more about this. Betty, thanks for joining us on Network Africa. Now, this case has been adjourned till next year, January. Why such a long time, Betty?
Well, you heard Pindelo there, the spokesperson for the National Prosecuting Authority. The state still has to investigate the matter. You don't just charge someone based on another person's testimony. So they asked for 6 months in order to investigate further and to charge him. Probably more charges or more accused persons will be added to the charge list, according to what we were told. So it will be January the 24th before we hear more about the case.
Now, for the first time, a high-ranking individual may be penalized for their alleged links to the state capture issue. How are South Africans reacting to this charge against Duduzane Zuma?
Well, it's been an issue. I mean, the concept of state capture or the capture of a state is quite scary to a lot of people. So people want to see how this will end. They want to see if people will actually be called to question, people will be brought to book. But you must know that this particular case is just regarding the alleged attempt to bribe Mr. Mcebisi Jonas. The state capture issue is being handled by an inquiry headed by the Deputy Chief Justice, that's Justice Raymond Zondo. The first hearings will start in August, that's next month, although he says that some of the key witnesses are being approached at the moment to come forward with their testimony or to cooperate with the inquiry. So that is a separate issue. In this particular case, it's in response to that affidavit sworn by Mr. Mcebisi Jonas that there was an attempt to bribe him with that amount of money, 600 million rand, and an offer to be the minister. Recall the cabinet was changed. I think that was before the cabinet was changed when these allegations came.
Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Still to come on Network Africa. Dormitories at 3 schools in Kenya have been set ablaze in the latest unrest to hit schools in the East African nation. Please stay with us.